Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webcast, Recognition That Works, Driving Amazing Engagement and Boosting ROI. Today's webcast is sponsored by Achievers. Achievers' employee success platform delivers proven employee recognition, continuous listening tools, and timely coaching tips for organizations to give experience and to drive organizational success. To learn more, visit achievers.com. This webcast has been pre-approved for HRCI and SHRM credit. Please be sure to attend the complete webcast in order to receive your credits. You will receive an email from hr.com within 2 business days. It will include the certification credit information. You may also log in to hr.com and go to your View My Credits page, where you can see the credits that you have received. If you have any questions during the webcast, click on Q&A in your webinar controls and type them in. And now I would like to introduce you to our speaker today. Meghan M. Biro is a globally recognized HR and technology analyst, author, speaker, and brand strategist. The founder of Talent Culture, she hosts #WorkTrends, a popular weekly Twitter chat and podcast. Her career spans across recruiting, talent management, digital media, and brand strategy for hundreds of companies, from startups to global brands like Microsoft, IBM, and Google. Meghan can be regularly found on Forbes, Huffington Post, Entrepreneur, and a variety of other outlets. You can find her on Twitter and Instagram at Meghan M. Biro. And now over to you, Meghan.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here today. I have a big question as I open up this webinar, and I know it's top of mind for many of you out there. What are the most effective ways to harness recognition, engage your workforce, and retain your best employees? Engagement and retention thrive on recognition that's baked into your culture, aligned with your objectives, and speaks to the needs, the behaviors, the expectations of every single generation. And if you follow me on the Twitters or you're part of my audience somewhere out there, you know generations are really important to me, right? And the best ways to do that, the best ways we shape that culture of recognition, you focus on the right timing, the delivery, the channels, the format. Recognition works best when you know about your workforce, right? When you consider their work lives, their behaviors, you just consider them, right? You find out what really engages them. While there's no formula for employee engagement across the board with your workforce, what does work mean, right? To each demographic, to each generation, each tier of skills, experience, and job title. Each generation has different expectations, right? They have needs, and this goes to the person. That's where recognition works, and I love that about recognition, right? It's about human, right? A great recognition program includes the various cadences, forms, messages, right? Because we're all online, and these are varied, and these are as diverse as your workforce. I realize that. So how you shape and how you deliver that recognition has everything to do with truly driving engagement. So let's dive right in. I've got 7 factors here to drive amazing engagement and boost your ROI, all right? So here's what we're going to cover today. And keep in mind, we're going to be taking your questions at the end of this presentation, and I'm looking forward to that, okay? So here's what we're covering, the news and the numbers, the must-know insights on engagement. Timing is everything. So how to go about setting up recognition cadences for your workforce. No one size fits all, please, right? That's not even in our vocabulary. This is really key. How to succeed in meeting the expectations of each generation, gaining buy-in. Painful, right? Sometimes, because we need more than a great idea and a nice pitch. So how do we get leaders on board? Level by level. Keep this in mind. There's key steps for leaders and managers. Going social, right? How do you create momentum with social recognition and why that's important? I know we talk a lot about it, but let's break that down a little bit. Let's also talk about models that work. We're going to take a look at companies doing recognition right, and we're going to learn from this. So very exciting stuff. I think we're about ready for a poll question right now. I hope you all have your coffee, your water, your tea, whatever you got out there, okay? So here's some questions for you. How would you describe your engagement in your company? All right, we've got different responses here. Your workforce is very engaged. More than half the workforce is very engaged. About half the workforce is very engaged. Less than half your workforce is very engaged. Hardly any of your workforce is engaged, to be honest, right? And you can be honest. We want to hear from you and see what you think. So take a little time and weigh in. Okay, so you are awake out there. Number one, you're here, you're alive, you've got a heartbeat. Congrats to you, right? Okay, I've got 8% of you saying your workforce is very engaged. Pretty low number there, right? 26% are saying more than half the workforce is very engaged. About 42% of you are weighing in about half the workforce is very engaged. So we've got 19% at less than half is very engaged. 4% of you out there are being honest with us. You're saying just not that engaged. So thank you so much, right? Thanks for weighing in. I know your time is precious. So let's get into the nuts and bolts, the news and the numbers, the must-know insights on engagement right now. I've had some really fascinating discussions on the topic of engagement lately, particularly on my podcast, right? We're all heading into 2020 knowing engagement is more important than ever, but there's still this sense of gray area. Like, how do we really know on a day-to-day basis how our employees are doing? It's a pain point, I know, for many of us. One way to look at the negative, right? Because, I mean, we're all kind of disgruntled, everyone's complaining about it, right? We can look at that, right? And I think it's pretty easy to tell if things aren't going well. So let's look at disengagement first. According to Gallup's State of the American Workplace Research, disengaged employees cost the U.S. $450 to $550 billion per year in lost productivity. But what is disengagement? Tell me if any of these ring a bell to you as you're sitting and thinking. Employees are complacent. Employees are checked out. They're disgruntled. They're apathetic. They're staying for the paycheck. What does that look like, right? Your people don't really seem to be into what you're doing, right? You're not feeling it. None of you are. And you don't do it very well or very fast. They're there, but not there. You know what I'm saying? So your managers may doesn't contribute to conversations and withholds ideas, right? Or doesn't appear to be emotionally invested in outcomes or motivated to creatively tackle tasks or challenges, but also isn't interested in discussions about it. Perhaps they no longer seem to feel that company priorities should be their priorities, right? Or an employee appears to be honestly and obviously irritated with everything, right? Everything you do is not right. Negatively responds to questions, you name it, right? You feel it. That's the bottom line here. And they may seem to want to create discontent. That's what worries us, right? They may publicly second-guess leadership and invite others to do so. Heck, let's take it over to Twitter, right? So managers begin to sense this real problem brewing. And one of the solutions we sometimes get to, let nature take its course, right? Oh, that bad apple must be looking for a new job. They're going to leave soon. We're just going to wait it out, mitigate the damage. But guess what? The disengaged employee may not want to leave at all. Then we got problems, right? Bottom line here, disengagement is expensive, possibly even more of a negative in terms of running your business. When a disengaged employee sticks around, right, because maybe they got nowhere else to go, this kind of complacency is not a reality that's been prominent, I think, on everybody's radar. But not every disengaged employee is actively looking to leave. Let's remember that, right? The 2019 report by Achievers on this issue, it's called the complacency effect, shows that a lot of employees are opting to stay for a paycheck, essentially getting paid through going through the motions, doing nothing for the company and not leaving, okay? Painful, right? I think we've all probably seen plenty of situations in which upper management doesn't want to take action unless there's a clear business toll. The complacency effect report makes this very clear. Even if a few people who are disengaged can take an enormous toll on your organization and your business objectives. For instance, disengaged employees have 37% higher absenteeism. 18% lower productivity, 15% lower profitability. That's not a neutral situation, everyone. Disengagement can cause tangible damage, but it can't be that many employees, right? Well, that's a question I hear frequently. Can't be that many people, right? That we must get better at disengagement since we've been working on it, but actually not so much. Disengagement doesn't make employees leave. It just doesn't make them want to work. Only 21% of employees feel very engaged, but here's the kicker. Only 14% of employees would cite being disengaged as a reason to change jobs. And only 35% of employees are planning to look for a new job. That's what Achievers found when looking at trends regarding the North American workforce. And I thought it was really fascinating. That's why I'm here today. Most employees don't want change. They want stability, right? We can see all the reasons for it when we look at the bigger picture. Economic and political volatility could be amongst them right now, huh? Anyone else feeling that? I find this especially startling because when you asked that same question last year, 74% said they were planning to look for a new job. Now, you've got a lot of employees, 65% just staying put. And chances are quite a few of these people are disengaged. So, bottom line, disengagement is preventable. Despite there being a 3.7% or 3.6% unemployment, lower actually in many major cities, a disengaged employee who doesn't like their job may just dig in their heels, coasting, paycheck to paycheck, remaining complacent, checked out, coasting on your dime, on your wallet. That stinks, right? So if you're concerned about objectives, collectively engaged teams that work to achieve them, and customers who want to stay with your brand for its people, its service, and or product, you really can't afford to let this get past you. Of course, all right, I'm here not to be all doom and gloom with everybody, Debbie Downer, right? Nobody needs that. But of course, the good news is that you can prevent this, right? If we look at these causes, we know what they are: lack of recognition and low potential for career growth. We got to care for that. A recognition culture that celebrates growth. Here's another cause: poor relationships with managers. Care for this? Give that frequent feedback and recognition between managers and employees. We got another one. The bosses don't take action on anything. They just sit around. Leadership involved in a reciprocal exchange, right? It goes back and forth, right? You feel that, hey, I'm getting to know this person. It's not just my boss, it's my colleague. Fourth cause, not getting paid enough. No surprise, right? A trackable recognition and reward system that conveys value and meaning could help with some of that. So as we know, we're not going to be all doom and gloom today. We're going to try to work on making recognition work. And I think, when I bring up this topic, I like to talk about the fact that timing is everything. How do you do it? One critical factor is cadence. If you want to improve motivation and morale, you don't do it by making recognition a one-shot deal. A few years ago, there was an article in Harvard Business Review, which is right in my neck of the woods here in Cambridge, about the recognition deficit that included an amazing story. Get this, about a dedicated life-saving oncologist whose employers recognized her 4-decade milestone by presenting her with a plastic keychain. Now, okay, this oncologist wasn't going away. She wasn't looking to leave, but her allegiance was to her patients, not her employer, which is a huge loss for the employer. Granted, the healthcare industry is ranked pretty low in terms of employment engagement. In one survey, it actually came out dead last. But here you have a veteran who is incredible at doing her job and could be an amazing mentor and brand ambassador. She's probably got students learning from her constantly, and you're giving her very little reason to contribute anything more to your organization. This is not a phone right, in kind of a job. She's not phoning it in. Certainly, she's called on to mentor, right? But this really just means that a new generation of oncologists may be heading elsewhere. That's where I'm going with this. The prognosis? Don't wait so long. Certainly not 40 years. You can even do it in 40 days, right? 3 reasons why. 41% of employees say they are recognized at their preferred frequency. 75% of employees who are recognized once a month say they're satisfied with their job. 85% of employees who are recognized once a week say they're satisfied with their job. You see where I'm going with this? Let's look at this for a minute. Let's look at the power of momentum and sort of this feedback cue that happens. You can provide recognition in a whole range of forms. It's more than the fact and action than it is anything else, right? You could be doing this on social channels. You can point towards an award or an award itself. It could be a manager shout out to an employee. But in terms of frequency, you can start harnessing the power of recognition to drive engagement when you harness the power of momentum. That means increasing frequency of recognition and building up momentum as you do. So it might look something like this, okay? We got the feedback. You initiate that first exchange. We got an event. You set the tone with an occasion. You have this acceleration effect, right? You build up this frequency. You've got consistency, and this is so very important. Take notes here. Keep those recognition experiences moving. Make it self-sustaining. Let that momentum take a human course. Let it be natural. Don't force it. It feels yucky that way, right? So occasions of recognition become these cohesive moments in a culture of recognition. I find this really exciting. And then you can kind of get it into this whole regular cadence. So employees take it for granted a little bit, right? But they also know that they're taking the initiative in this, and it's noticed and celebrated, and they feel valued in this. So you really want to match those efforts to the results. And that culture of recognition, I can tell you from experience, it's catching, right? People start to really get into it. So give it a shot. Okay, we are ready for a poll question again. How often do you provide recognition for your employees? All the time, once a month, once or twice a year? Talk to me. What's going on over there in your organization? All right. What have we got here? Ooh, we have 23% of you are doing this all the time. 27% of you once a month, 50% of you once or twice a year. So, yeah, we got to keep doing this, right? It's very important, and I'm glad to see that so many of you are actually putting this into action. Okay, so here's the tricky part, right? No one person is alike, and you really want to start talking about each generation. And that poll we ran doesn't reveal a problem with how often or not often we recognize. What it reveals actually is that we are still evolving our sense of what's appropriate to do for our workforce, right? A great rule of thumb is to consider the generation on the receiving end or participating, since there are a lot of terrific ways to make recognition and feedback a reciprocal part of your work culture, right? First off, if you're starting to bring in the newest generation, that can be a really hard one. I get it, right? So, one key, remember something, Gen Z ain't millennials, right? Here's what they are. 61 million are now entering the workforce. They're digital natives and consumers of every experience. They want feedback and more feedback. 60% prefer their manager check-ins several times a week. 40% want at least once a day interaction with their boss. 66% need feedback at least every few weeks to stay at their job. Here's what I'm going to recommend to you as we look at 61 million people entering the workforce, okay? If you're sitting down, you want to make feedback prompt, simple, swift, and focused. Limited length has better impact. Try a sentence, try an emoji, no more than that. Right? More may seem excessive, pandering, insincere, right? Since you're kind of trying too hard to be cool, go short. Make it social, make it mobile. Do me a favor, stay off Facebook. Gen Z gravitates to peer-to-peer social media and messaging apps, and they don't really love Facebook, okay? Seriously. And they are definitely hooked on their smartphone. So texting a moment of recognition can be very effective here. The space that Generation Z dwells in isn't digital and it's not physical. It's both all at once. It's phygital, I like to call it. And they crave social connection, right, with everybody. So social recognition is going to work really well with them. And we're going to cover how to do that in just a bit. So let's get back to something. What about millennials? Reality check here too. Millennials are not Gen Z. They, or we, if you're out there, Okay, I won't get into that. If you follow me on Twitter, I won't get into that, I promise right now. But they, or we, will comprise of will comprise of 75% of the global workforce by 2025. Many are really burned out. 28% report feeling frequently or constantly burned out at work. Less than half want feedback from their supervisor at least every few weeks in order to stay at their job. But regular meetings with their manager are twice as likely to keep them engaged at work. And 64% want to be recognized. So 3/4 state that the culture and atmosphere of their workforce is just as important as pay and benefits. Remember that, right? In some ways, the millennial generation taught the rest of us about the power of recognition, demonstrating when recognition is specific, relevant, and authentic, as opposed to, mailing that oncologist that keychain that we all think is really cool, right? It can have an incredible effect on their engagement. Millennials are also managers right now. They're leaders. They're rising up in the ranks, and they're also going to be the ones giving out this recognition. They may need to understand the particulars of Generation Z are not the same. So there you go. Let's not leave out these older generations, shall we? The boomers, the Gen Xers. You don't want to leave anybody out. Because they're also responding, right? We have 70 million baby boomers expected to retire as of 2020. Many were raised on the gold watch and bonus thing, right? There was a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, so to speak. That doesn't mean that they don't appreciate and leverage recognition, by the way. We're all human. Don't require frequent recognition. They don't require frequent recognition to get their job done, right? This is no surprise. They're very good and very experienced. They don't need somebody tweeting encouragement, okay? But again, keep in mind something. They may not even expect recognition to involve them as a leader, as an employee. So, knowing this mindset really helps people include everybody rather than exclude based on behaviors that you might see unfolding, okay? Because they're still giving out recognition, rewards, leadership. So don't leave anybody out in the equation, and just know that everybody's different. Gaining buy-in. How do we get leaders on board? I know this is a big one for a lot of you. I think there's two parts of getting executive buy-in. One part is getting the C-suite and upper management involved in a program of recognition, because if they're not participating, it's not going to seem sincere. If they're not participating in the right ways, it looks kind of like old school, like, it's not that exciting. So I've seen cases where an organization actually institutes a recognition program and hands the keys to the leader every once in a while, and the results are not that good. So we got more work to do. We know that, right? Top-down recognition can be misinterpreted sometimes as manipulative or probably just the wrong tone. I think leaders may not be tuned in with the cadence of recognition or the pace of the work and efforts being recognized. So regardless of their best intentions, the efforts fall flat. So it's really, really important to get that leadership buy-in when you're thinking about that. And you want to bring in the majority of stakeholders, right? Because it's going to be better for everybody, better for your business. And when you're bringing in the stakeholders, you really need to consider needs and metrics, all right? What do they need to happen? What do they constitute a positive from their point of view? What are these metrics that are going to support these objectives? Is it a stock price? Is it ROI? Is it KPIs on production or sales? What are the cost savings of switching to a modern recognition platform rather than the old way of occasional emails and the pat on the back? Okay, maybe not a pat on the back, but not integrated and systematic, not trackable, not social. So really consider everybody in this equation. And how do you go about doing this, okay? There's a really great report by Aptitude about making the case for social recognition, but the strategies apply also to recognition programs in general. Making the business case is actually not that hard, right? We've been studying the power of engagement. We've been tracking the challenge of retention. It's now well stitched into the DNA, I think, of every single talent strategy out there. But here are some pretty compelling statistics from the Aptitude report that we uncovered. Nearly 60% of companies identified retaining top talent as the greatest challenge they face in 2018 and beyond. Companies with effective employee recognition programs have 31% lower voluntary turnover. And in terms of how recognition can help overcome the problems of not just of retention, but also of complacency and low performance, despite only 21% of employees saying they feel engaged, remember that only 35% of employees plan to look for a new job in 2019, which leaves you with 65% of your workforce not looking for a new job, right? But also the odds are slim that if they feel engaged and motivated about your role in the company, right? So a great recognition system can free your employees from just treading water and adding little to your company. It really can be a big difference maker. All right, so I think it's time to hear what's on your mind. I'm going to ask you another poll question. Who is involved in recognition efforts at your company? Some managers, it's up to the individual. The managers, but not leadership. The leaders as well as the managers. What's going on in your world out there? Okay, so let's see what's top of mind for everybody. Interesting. Okay, 29% of you say some managers, it's up to the individual. Get this, 8% of you, the managers, but not leadership. 63% of you, the leaders as well as the managers. So it's an interesting range, these results. And I think it's important to note that while the ideal is having the entire organization fully involved, that's not always going to happen. We got to get real on it. The question is how effective a culture of recognition and a recognition program can be if leaders and managers are not all involved. So thank you for weighing in. Appreciate that. Okay, so I've seen organizations at a loss in terms of how to map out the shift to a recognition culture for leaders and managers. So I want to look at how to involve them because they are key players in any effective program. It's not just about giving employees a new tool, it's the whole organization. So if you want your recognition culture to be effective, you have to involve leaders. It's just as simple, right? You want to set an example. Leaders who are part of frequent recognition of employees are doing more than just participating. They're setting that example for everyone else, and they're putting the shift into gear, so to speak. You want to collaborate with managers. Leaders should work with managers to set the right cadence and pinpoint what behaviors, actions, and accomplishments they want to recognize. And when there's a specific push or initiative coming, they can collaborate and make sure recognition comes quickly. Make sure it's focused on the performance and provides a positive message that's consistent between leaders and managers. You want to stay involved. Leaders should make a commitment to stay involved in the program, right? Don't let anybody slack on this because it's so easy to do. It may be useful to start a sort of weekly cadence of recognition by leaders that also draws on what managers have been doing all week. That's just one instance, right? But stepping in and then out again makes the whole program kind of ring hollow, and we want to avoid that, right? Because it kind of erodes that whole effect that you have with motivation. Foster accountability. I think accountability is absolutely related to recognition. Both require clarity of purpose and both require results. Leadership can do this, right? The buck literally stops with leaders, and everyone needs to understand those results that the leaders want to achieve and, of course, be recognized for working towards them. And finally, so very important, remember this one, collect feedback, act on it. That's so important in terms of intention and integrity. And here, too, leadership carries a lot of weight on this. So let's keep these things in mind here. So with managers are the keepers of recognition. When managers make well-cadenced, frequent recognition a habit, then that recognition can become part of a habit throughout the workplace. They lead in the shift into the behavior, and they're the ones who can sustain it, they can refine it, fine-tune it, and improve it, because nothing's perfect. For them, it's really important, if you're out there and you're managing teams right now, get leaders on board. Enlist your leaders to come on board and be part of the program. Have them listen in so they can act on feedback in real time. You really want to get to know your teams and their preferences. Don't just start shooting out generic recognitions. That's not a good idea. Make sure you're aware, and great managers usually are, of the needs and wants of your talent. And I'm going to give you a little hint here. Make sure that's doubly true with your best employees. Ensure recognition is cadenced right. Not sure what the cadence should be. I know that's always a question I get a lot. Start that ball rolling by asking your employees what they want. It's really simple. Ask the question. Then what you want to do is gather that information and convey the results back to them. Communication is part of recognition, and I think it's a great way to start. Collect that feedback, share it with your leaders, ask your teams and your employees what they would prefer. You can do quick surveys that don't take up a whole bunch of time, because I know no one's in the mood for those right now. You can check in once in a while and take that poll. Then you want to bring all of this information to the leaders. Part of keeping leadership on board is showing these metrics, right? Showing the feedback, showing the communication. And of course, here we go, right? To all of us data nerds out there, we got any of you out there? Raise your hand. Track those results and growth. For the business case and for employees, this is a wonderful piece of information that really shows the evolution happening in your workplace. So hopefully that helps you. Okay, we're going social, everyone. If you haven't gone social yet, I got an idea for you. Hit Twitter, hit it, and I'm kidding with all of you, but really, social is really important. I'm there if you want to find me, by the way, at Twitter, at Meghan M Biro, or I like to play around on Instagram a lot these days, but you know, you really want to create momentum with social recognition, all right? Social recognition is an amazing tool for reinforcing engagement among your people. A social recognition program uses technology, but it does it in this kind of innate and seamless way, combining it with culture in a way most employees will relate to, particularly social and mobile-centric millennials and Gen Z. And it's been shown to have a powerful impact on employee engagement. So there's certainly a piece of social that's very, very key to making this work, particularly with some of the younger generations. So here's what social recognition, what it does, and I think it does it quite effectively. It enables companies to recognize and validate behaviors. It empowers employees to share their work. It provides unlimited access to non-monetary recognition. It automates how points are awarded, distributed, and budgeted. It automates how employees are recognized. It encourages, and I love this one so much, peer-to-peer recognition. Love that. And it celebrates sales incentives and years of service and can celebrate other milestones as well. It also leverages data to strengthen your company culture and embrace those shared victories, those moments when you say, I really feel good about this. I also think social recognition by nature is kind of authentic. I think it feels more immediate to people. It involves the participation of everyone, which makes that cognitive friction, right, of top-down, unilateral gestures kind of interesting, right, which can make employees question the communication sincerity, right? So be careful here, of course, but do it. Just dive into it and see where it takes you. Social recognition focuses on employee experience. I think social recognition technology is very different from traditional HR systems, right? It's focusing on employee experience and culture, and it uses different tools for communication. So I'm going to give you a look here. I'm going to guide you through this chart with me. We've got traditional HR systems on the left, and they are focused on tactical activities. You've got these separate modules, right, that may or may not be integrated. They're designed to handle every activity and task without integrating with outside providers. And they initiate emails as a primary form of communication, okay? Then we go over here and we look at an employee experience platform. Let's look at some of the differences here. They are focused on employee experience and strategic initiatives. They span the entire employee experience. They are designed to integrate seamlessly with existing HR systems and third-party providers. And this is the fun part. There's just various channels you can use. So video, mobile, collaboration, messaging. You see where I'm going here? So I want to focus a little bit on models that work. I want to touch on two examples of companies who are improving the recognition programs they already had in place by replacing them with a far more effective, integrated, consistent, and unifying platform, okay? So these companies, in my opinion, they're doing recognition right, and they're also seeing results. And that, to me, that's where the proof is in the pudding, right? Let's talk about General Motors. Their goal was connecting to purpose. GM was a whole lot of different recognition programs. I think they had like 16 of them for its 170,000 employees who speak, get this, 65 different languages all around the world. The company wanted to switch to a program that could better support their approach to engagement and to more easily connect with that program to their values and their evolving culture. Like so many big companies, GM is shifting from being a maker of cars to a provider of technology. And certainly key behaviors really matter in that context, right? They wanted to really increase engagement as it drives innovation, customer satisfaction, and quality. They were very invested in these metrics and how a recognition program gives employees this kind of connectivity. They also wanted to create this global experience that was consistent. So the buy-in was achieved by showing real business results. There was a great interview with Sandra Garcia, and she's the Global Compensation Center of Expertise lead for Global Strategic Initiatives. And here's what she says. Through our recognition platform, employees are able to connect the work they do every day with the company values and gain a deeper understanding of how their work contributes to the company. This gives employees a sense of purpose and accomplishment. This also really connects here with the importance of employee experience, how recognition can improve it. Here, it's not really about the transactional pats on the back. It's not about a reward for a single accomplishment. It's really about driving this sort of increased sense of purpose and accomplishment. And that's what I think is really at the core of engagement. Here's another one, Kellogg's. With 35,000 employees worldwide, they had to find a way to reinforce behaviors on a global scale, right? That's a huge initiative. They wanted to make a platform that's completely workable on mobile. They wanted to encourage peer-to-peer and social. And to make sure the platform was getting that sort of strong adoption quickly, they created recognition champions throughout the workforce. Within 4 months, get this everyone, they saw 80,000 recognitions. They wanted to build a culture of continuous recognition in its multi-generational workforce. And it also gave leaders the ability to boost the recognition. That's the connection to leader participation, and also that thing about recognizing your top performance was happening. So leaders and managers were able to kind of monitor that feedback and respond to the information. So the recognition technology at Kellogg's quickly became part of a daily part of their workflow. Melissa Howell, she's their Chief Human Resources Officer, said this: how do we align our employees around the vision at Kellogg? One of the biggest things around that is reinforcing behaviors and reinforcing success. And the best way to do that is a global kind of a platform. Everyone can see how people are modeling the behaviors and help drive that success. So I think those are two really huge examples, right? And you can do this with companies of every size. Let's just keep that in mind. If you want to be able to inspire and motivate your workforce, recognition technology is invaluable. So I'm just going to leave you with this, and then we're going to move over to some of your questions. Recognition is a powerful way to shape a culture. I think it's the most effective way to drive engagement and transform the employee experience. And most importantly, inspire a multi-generational workforce. You can use this to wrap them around this sort of shared sense of purpose and meaning, and one that aligns with your company, right? Because we're all really worried about the cost of disengagement in terms of not just your workers who leave, but workers who don't leave, right? Recognize is going to help boost your ROI in tangible, measurable ways. So making sure that you've got everybody on board, right, is really, really important. So, with having said that, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here with me. And I'm going to turn this over back to HR.com.
Hi, Megan. We've had some great questions come in from our audience. I'll just go through them one by one. Can you talk a bit more about how leaders can participate in recognition?
Sure. I mean, actually, I think they shouldn't just be participating. I think leaders should really be dialed in. As I said earlier, I think they should be spearheading that shift to a better program. And it's definitely an instance where it's a clear mandate from them. So I think it makes a huge statement. And I think leaders that play an active role in sort of this human way, in a continuous way, are really going to add to a culture of recognition. And recognition technology is definitely a way that we're bridging these communication gaps between the C-suite and their workforce. And that does away with this whole thing that we have of like detached executives. I know that sounds kind of old school, up there in their offices away from us, right? Disaligned, but I think just the ease of use and being able to do it so quickly is going to make it a lot easier for leaders. And it's not always that they want to be removed from the goings on. I think sometimes they just don't have those tools or the time, frankly, you know?
Thank you. Next question. What's important about singling out top performers? Wouldn't you want to keep recognition equal?
Well, I mean, recognition is really a reflection of your workplace, but it's also, I think, a way of providing aspirational examples. So I don't think of it as singling out. I think the thing about social recognition and recognition technology is that you can share it across any group you want. You can do it with a team, a unit, a whole company, but also you want to make sure you're recognizing top performers, right? You want them to stay. You want them to be engaged. And you also want to kind of focus on these behaviors that we want to reinforce. I think when we talk about social recognition, what we're looking at, it's the key to focusing on the employee, not just transactions or tactics, but really building this macro sense of loyalty. And that also, by the way, doesn't mean you avoid individual recognitions. I just think social recognition can happen in so many different ways and so many different channels that it could feel more organic. And I think, you know, in talking to people of different generations, that's the feedback I hear. So we can all kind of take part in that together. And, you know, we have the tools now and the technology to do it, right?
Thank you, Megan. Next question. With Gen X versus younger employees, we're concerned with how to loop all into a recognition program. Any advice?
I mean, I think that's a great question. I think Gen X likely experienced different forms of rewards and recognition, monetary to benefits and perks, right, as they join the workforce. So with them in particular, they may respond best to recognition that comes from the executives, from the boss, so to speak, right, from benefits like telecommuting or flexible schedules. I mean, I'm not saying only use these forms of recognition, though, but while Gen Z and millennials can also respond to these kinds of perks, it's just not as much of a plus, if that makes sense. So we're talking about something that's rather nuanced. Also, it may be part of Gen Z and millennials' expectations that this flexibility is just kind of like part of their normal schedule. So sometimes I think given how connected they are through technology, they don't always understand why they have to be in the office in the first place, right? And like when we start talking about bonuses and gift cards and stock rewards, I think everyone will respond to these, though I think older generations understand this as more of a motivating thing in kind of a more natural, intrinsic way. So I think having a whole range of form of recognition is definitely going to carry weight.
Thank you. Next question here. We're really concerned with making the business case. There's a lot of burnout in our organization. Will recognition help?
Well, yeah, I mean, another super question, by the way, and I just want to let you know out there, you're not alone. I think the thing is, you know, I happen to have all these great stats right in front of me, right, because we're doing some work on burnout, and I'm kind of fascinated by these statistics, but let me get into this one just a little bit more. The simple answer is yes. Recognition is a great way to revitalize burned out employees, right? I mean, when we talk about it, nearly 50% of employees say that their employees are burned out, right? It's a diagnosable condition right now, recognized by the World Health Organization, right? According to Gallup, 23% of employees report feeling burned out at work, very often or always, and an additional 44% reported feeling it sometimes. So here's definitely a connection to this business case. Every year, and this is from HBR, Harvard Business Review, burnout costs between 125 and 190 billion every year in healthcare costs. So burnout as in workplace stress and related conditions. So will recognition help here? The reason a recognition system will work, I think, is that it provides all these components that I think will help combat this, right? Communication, contact, motivation, acknowledging people, feedback, leadership. I mean, there's a lot there. That takes a lot of energy if we're getting real on this. And I think you're going to end up saving money in some very tangible ways if you let some of this technology kind of help you streamline basically being human. So you're not taking the human out of it. I just want to remember, everybody remember that. You're not taking it out, but you're helping yourself. And in that way, you're not as stressed out. So.
Thank you. Another question here. If we need to explain a recognition platform to the rest of our company, can you give us a big picture way to present it?
Oh, I love this question. Okay, so here's how I see it. Recognition, right? A recognition platform marries culture and technology in a very effective way. I think that benefits people and transforms the workplace. I think recognition is about creating this cadence of communication and feedback across all levels in any organization. So I think if you think of culture as the norms of an organization, when you look at people's habits, their behaviors, their communication style, recognition shapes this. But you can also use recognition to improve culture, right? To drive a better culture, to improve behaviors. I think the technology, and we talk about this as like the design and the software, I think it definitely gives us a way of delivering this new culture and also sustaining it. And that's all it is. And of course, the most important ingredient is your people, right? Us humans. And that means each and every one of us. You want to get everybody involved. And when you do, it's pretty amazing what can happen, seriously. So hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. We have a lot more questions coming in now. Okay, I work as a lead in the HR operations unit, and we have multiple subunits which deliver service with different complexity levels. How do I convince management about having different reward programs for the high complex areas by design, or will this at all work?
That's a great question. I mean, obviously you need to bring it to leadership, and leaders and managers need to be working on this together. I know Tony's here. Tony, do you want to weigh in on this a little bit? You may want to speak to some side of this. But
Tony?
I think it's a great question. Tony, are you here? Because I think when we talk about this topic, you can design, every program is designable with technology, depends on size of company, but you want the managers in this equation are really, really important. So something to keep in mind.
Okay, let me just find the next question for you. Okay,
Sure.
so someone says, I don't think it's only the younger generations who need recognition. The older generations have likely gotten used to it, but do you agree that all employees need recognition? I mean that older generations may have gotten used to living without recognition, even though they enjoy it.
Oh, I think everybody wants recognition as a human, right? I think there's just a very human need to be recognized, responded to, communicated. I just think that the quote unquote older generations, they look at it differently. You know, it's not as streamlined with their everyday lives. They still kind of fall into that, like, I go to work and then I go home. And I leave those two things a little more separate. And now I think, you know, because we're all becoming, you know, more independent and there's more gig workers. I mean, this is a really large topic, obviously, that I can go on and on forever with, but absolutely everybody needs and wants recognition. So hopefully that's helped.
Thank you. Next question. What has
Awesome.
been the best recognition model for fast food employees with very high turnover, mostly Gen Z?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I would say ones in which everything is mobile and it's seamless and fast, right? Because those type of atmospheres have a whole lot of turnover and people are coming in and out. So any way we can be seamless, we can be mobile, and we can be understanding retention issues, because I know the restaurant industry is just sort of notorious for the whole turnover thing. So that's how I would answer that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Another question here. Are you seeing any changes in terms of how we recognize milestones or anniversaries? With the different generations, are companies targeting different forms of recognition for the different groups based on majority?
I think that that's a possibility, yes. I wish I had a little more data on that right now, but I think that my short answer might be yes on that. And I think, yeah, more and more people are adopting to technology, just in general from a macro perspective, and more people are becoming social. And when we have those two things converging, we have more of like everybody's doing it kind of a thing, and something that we want to continue to understand with data to support that as well. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Another
You're
question.
welcome.
I manage a really low-paid call center. It's tough and low-paid work. Do you have any suggestions about engaging them?
Well, I mean, one of the things you want to do is start getting pulse surveys together, right? The number one thing you want to do first is ask the question, why? Why are you here? How are you feeling? You want to connect, you want to ask questions, and you want to start getting a feedback loop that is regular, right? That you can communicate the fact that you are listening and tracking, as I talked about earlier in my presentation. So, asking the question is always the first step. And then from there, if you find that it's working and you're getting that feedback and you're having these conversations, how do you bake that into technology? How do you get leaders to then say, this is actually pretty cool. Like, I love hearing that Mary did that, last week and that affected her in that way. But it's really important to always ask and just make it a part of your regular workflow, make it a priority. And then again, as I said, you got to get leaders on board. It's not just about your peers, it's getting buy-in, right? It's getting everybody to bake it into the culture. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It looks like this is the last one at the moment. We've noticed that Gen Z and millennials expect recognition to come in the form of upward mobility, which is not always appropriate. What do you think these generations feel so entitled to move up rapidly in title and rank before they even demonstrate the experience and skills for a higher level role?
Well, I just think it's the way it is, right? I think it's our reality. It's just they've read a lot of news growing up, right? They've seen the stories, they've seen the pitfalls, and we all want work to be better. So I think that we have to get real about the fact that, we have a global disengagement situation that's been unfolding over the years. And we still have employees who are not only disengaged, but most importantly, I think one of the key takeaways and what everybody remember is they're staying at your company because now they're fearful because things seem so uncertain out there, right? To me, that's the next burgeoning question is like, okay, then how can we take action and get at the people who are just kind of floating along and being ho-hum? So great question. I totally want to unpack this further, I tell you, but after we've studied the data and I've had several conversations with all different generations over the years, they definitely want more. The bar has been raised. And because we have platforms and communication tools to talk, we're going to use them. And so that's why it's important to have everybody buy into the fact that it's important to be listening and to be engaging your employees and your leaders and having that happen vice versa in every single direction. So, yeah, it's a big one for sure.
Thank you, Megan. It looks like that is all the questions that we've had in today from the audience. Did you have any final closing remarks before we end the webcast today?
Oh, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Meghan M. Biro. Feel free to email me. I'm just mbiro@talentculture.com. Thanks for being here and listening in.
Thank you. This concludes our webcast for today. I would like to thank Meghan M. Biro for this presentation today, as well as all of you for joining us. If you would like to view this webcast again, the archive recording and slides will be available on hr.com very shortly. The webcast credits will show in your hr.com account within 2 business days, and we will also send you an email with the credit information. Your feedback is important to us. Please take a moment and fill out the exit survey. This concludes our webcast. Enjoy the rest of your day.